In the heart of Moscow, Idaho, a peaceful college town known more for its wheat fields than for its headlines, an unspeakable act shattered the silence. On the morning of November 13, 2022, 4 University of Idaho students were found brutally stabbed to death in their off-campus home. It was a massacre that would stun a community, trigger a multi-state investigation, and eventually lead to the arrest of a criminology Ph.D. student, someone who had studied the minds of killers and may have tried to become one. Who was the person behind this horror? Why this house? And how did investigators unravel a case that at first seemed utterly baffling? Over the next 15 minutes, we'll walk you through the chilling timeline, the evolving investigation, and the legal maze that followed. This is the story of a tragedy that became a national obsession and a mystery still unfolding. Before we dive in, hit that follow or subscribe button so you don't miss more true stories just like this. Ethan Chapin, 20th. Madison Mogan, 21st. Xana Kernodle, 20th. Kaylee Goncalves, 21st. 4 friends, bright futures, all cut short in a moment of unimaginable violence. On the night of Saturday, November 12, 2022, they were doing what many college students do. Kaylee and Maddie, lifelong best friends, headed to the Corner Club bar downtown. Ethan and Xana, a couple, went to a party at the Sigma Chi frat house. 2 other roommates who lived in the house also went out that night. By 1:45 a.m. Sunday, all 6 roommates were back at the King Road home. Surveillance footage showed Kaylee and Maddie grabbing food from the grub truck, then getting a ride back. Ethan and Xana returned around the same time. It was a normal night until it wasn't. Somewhere between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m., something horrific happened in that house. 4 students would be dead. 2 others would survive, but what they witnessed would haunt investigators and a nation. According to a surviving roommate, it began quietly. Around 4 a.m., she was woken by what she thought was Kaylee playing with her dog. Then she heard a voice, maybe Kaylee's, maybe Xana's, saying, "There's someone here." The roommate opened her door but saw nothing. Moments later, she heard crying from Xana's room, and then a chilling phrase from a male voice, "It's okay. I'm going to help you." When she opened the door again, she saw a man in black clothing and a mask walking past her. She froze in terror as he exited through the sliding glass door. Security footage nearby caught the sound of a dog barking, then a loud thud, then silence. It wasn't until nearly 8 hours later that the first 911 call was placed, reporting an unconscious person. Friends had been called to the scene, thinking someone had simply passed out. But when police arrived, what they found was far worse. The crime scene was brutal. All 4 victims had been stabbed multiple times. Some had defensive wounds. All had likely been asleep when attacked. No sign of sexual assault. It was clear this was a targeted killing, but why? And by whom? Police immediately began piecing together surveillance footage from around the area. One clue kept coming up. A white Hyundai Elantra seen near the house multiple times that night, especially at 4:04 a.m., just before the murders were believed to have occurred. There was no murder weapon at the scene, but weeks later, a leather knife sheath would prove crucial. As the town of Moscow reeled, the case grew colder by the day, until technology, persistence, and DNA would blow it wide open. It wasn't until late December that the name Bryan Kohberger would enter the public eye. A 28-year-old Ph.D. student in criminology at Washington State University, just 10 miles away from the University of Idaho, Kohberger became a person of interest after his white Elantra was identified by campus police. What made it more chilling? Kohberger specialized in criminal behavior. He studied the minds of killers. Some of his online posts even asked criminals about their emotions during crimes. Phone records showed Kohberger's device was near the crime scene at least 12 times before the murders, mostly late at night. But on the night of the killings, his phone was mysteriously off from 2:47 to 4:48 a.m. When it turned back on, it pinged just 5 hours later, back near the house where the students had been murdered. While Kohberger's digital trail raised eyebrows, what truly linked him to the murders was something physical, a knife sheath found next to one of the victims. On December 27th, law enforcement retrieved trash from outside Kohberger's parents' home in Pennsylvania. DNA from that trash matched the father of the person whose DNA was on the knife sheath, statistically linking Kohberger to the crime scene. This was no longer circumstantial. This was forensic. The next day, Kohberger was arrested in the Pocono Mountains, across the country. His family said they had no idea. The Goncalves family said they'd never heard of him. And yet this man, so eerily close to the victims in proximity and in profile, was now the prime suspect in one of the most horrifying student murders in U.S. history. On December 30th, 2022, Bryan Kohberger was taken into custody. The arrest sent shockwaves across the country. A criminology Ph.D. student arrested for a quadruple homicide, it felt like something out of a thriller novel. In Moscow, relief mixed with grief. Police Chief James Fry emphasized, "No arrest will ever bring back these young students, but we believe justice will be found through the criminal process." The Goncalves family said they were thankful an arrest had been made, while others expressed frustration that it had taken so long. But police reminded the public this case involved meticulous work. It wasn't just about catching someone, it was about building a case that would stand up in court. Kohberger agreed to be extradited to Idaho. On January 4th, he was flown back west and walked into a courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, his face unreadable. Families of the victims stared him down, their eyes full of heartbreak and fury. January 5th, 2023. The court released an 18-page affidavit detailing the timeline and evidence that led to Kohberger's arrest. The court heard that Kohberger's DNA was found on the knife sheath at the scene. They heard that a roommate had seen a masked man with bushy eyebrows, matching Kohberger's description, leaving the house around the time of the murders. They heard that Kohberger's phone went dark just before the killings and came back online right after. That he returned to the scene later that morning. That his car was caught on multiple surveillance cameras looping near the house. As the judge read the charges, 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary, families wept. The courtroom was heavy with silence. Kohberger spoke only to confirm he had court-appointed counsel. Justice was moving forward, but questions still hung in the air. More details emerged from Pennsylvania. After Kohberger's arrest, police searched his parents' home. The evidence list was extensive. They found black gloves, a flashlight, masks, multiple knives, including one in a leather sheath, dark clothing, size 13 shoes. They also seized books on criminal psychology, a laptop, and personal journals. Among the most chilling discoveries were medical-style gloves and a shop vac, tools that raised new questions about planning and cleanup. It was the kind of haul investigators dream of. A potential treasure trove of insights into the mind of a killer. But so far, no clear motive, no diary confessions, no murder weapon conclusively tied to the wounds. Still, prosecutors were preparing for the possibility of capital punishment. On May 17, 2023, a grand jury formally indicted Bryan Kohberger on all 5 counts. 5 days later, in a courtroom in Idaho, Kohberger stood silent as the judge entered not guilty pleas on his behalf. Then, a major development. On June 26th, prosecutors confirmed they would seek the death penalty. The decision was driven by the brutality of the crimes, the number of victims, and what prosecutors described as premeditated and heinous behavior. This wasn't going to be a short trial. It wasn't going to be easy. It would be a long, grueling legal battle. And Kohberger's defense team wasn't backing down. They began crafting a strategy that raised new doubts. Kohberger's lawyers made a bold claim. He had an alibi. They didn't specify where he was, but they said he was driving during the late night and early morning hours, and not at the scene of the murders. They also pointed out a surprising detail. There was no DNA from the victims found in Kohberger's apartment, home, office, or car. If he committed this brutal crime, how did he manage to leave so little behind? On August 23rd, the defense filed a motion to dismiss the indictment, claiming the grand jury was biased and that key evidence was improperly presented. Meanwhile, Kohberger waived his right to a speedy trial. The October 2nd date was off the table. The trial was delayed indefinitely. This case had captivated and divided the public. Some saw Kohberger as a cold, calculating killer. Others believed in his innocence, citing gaps in the evidence. The court imposed a gag order to protect the trial's fairness. Media outlets pushed back, but the judge held firm. The case was too high profile, too volatile. On September 28th, prosecutors unsealed new documents revealing they'd demanded Amazon records tied to knife purchases. Every detail, every motion became fuel for internet sleuths and conspiracy theorists. TikTok exploded with amateur investigations. Reddit threads stretched for miles. But for the families, it wasn't about theories. It was about justice for Ethan, Maddie, Xana, and Kaylee. As the legal battle dragged on, the town of Moscow tried to heal. Ethan Chapin's mother described him as someone who laughed continuously. Maddie Mogan's dad said she was smart and funny and beautiful. Kaylee and Maddie, inseparable best friends, were found together, in the same bed, in the same room. Xana, vibrant and strong, had fought back. On November 30th, 2022, a candlelight vigil lit up the campus. Friends, professors, strangers, all came together to mourn. The message was clear. These students weren't just victims in a court file, they were sons and daughters, friends and siblings. Their story couldn't be reduced to headlines. It had to be remembered. Today, Bryan Kohberger remains in custody. No bail, no trial date set. The prosecution says the DNA doesn't lie. The defense says it's not enough. The court battle is likely to stretch for years, especially with the death penalty in play. And the public waits. For answers, for closure, for justice. Every court motion is another chapter. Every new detail adds to the puzzle. And still, we don't fully know why. Was this a perfect storm of opportunity and obsession? Or is there more to the story that hasn't yet come to light? Only the courtroom will decide. What happened inside the house on King Road will haunt Moscow for generations. It shattered a community, it challenged law enforcement, and it raised uncomfortable questions about what evil really looks like. A criminology student, a quiet town, a nightmare that no one saw coming. As this case heads toward trial, we'll be following every turn, because this is more than a story. It's a pursuit of justice. If this episode moved you or made you think, don't forget to subscribe or follow. We've got more real stories coming, stories that matter. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and remember, sometimes the scariest monsters wear the most ordinary faces.